Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. We are so happy. I am actually really thrilled and happy. I seen Aaron before under the Inner Circle with Kyle Wilson. He has written this book, Cash Uncomplicated. I love the book cover and the green, but I won his book and it's such a serendipity because plus he wrote in here, which I love, which is my dream this year, to your financial freedom. Aaron, thank you so much, Aaron, for being here.
Ree, it's great to be on.
So we're going to be talking about, finance, but at the same time, relationship with regards to finance, because I'm all about relationship, and Aaron is specialized in finance. And Aaron is actually, I'm going to say Aaron Nannini. I hope I said the last name correctly, or you
You
can
got it.
correct
Yep.
it. Okay. Aaron is actually the best-selling author of this particular book, Cash Uncomplicated. Go get your hand on it because it's such a simple nugget. I've read so many different books on finance because I can't seem to get my finance under control. And after reading Aaron's book, honestly, he really takes you to the step, but the logical and the psychology behind it, and he shows you why you need to do those things and how do you do it, Aaron. So thank you so much for writing a book. But before we go and dive into that, I wanted the audience to get to know you a little bit. Aaron, where were you born? How was childhood for you? And what kind of led you into the journey of wanting to write this book and how your business kind of start off?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up kind of middle class, maybe even upper middle class in a town called Newark, California, which
Mhm.
is most people don't really know that area, but there's a town called Fremont, which is near San Francisco, and that's where I'm from.
Okay.
So kind of live, just a regular life, elementary school, middle school, and then once I was in high school, I started to become I was decent with saving money. Like I had some part-time jobs and I would save and do some of the quote unquote right things. But
Hmm.
I never really understood investing or really the purpose of money. So for me it was, saving money was to have that money to buy something later, which I think is the attitude of a lot of Americans. And
Hmm.
I really maintained that attitude for many years, all throughout my early 20s and even into my late 20s. So, it wasn't until like I got to early 30s and by that time too, I wasn't saving enough to keep up with my life. So I actually got into a little bit of credit card debt. I wasn't investing anything. So, around the age of 30, I pretty much had zero money, $0 to my name. So I was that classic paycheck to paycheck story. And if I had one thing go wrong during the month, I was all of a sudden having to put that money on the credit card.
Hmm.
And I think as your audience knows, like that's a very dangerous place to be. And so kind of fast forward to, I think it was around mid 30s, I really started to educate myself on money and personal finance and not just like the quote unquote boring financial piece of it,
Hmm.
but also the the behavioral side of it and the
Hmm.
way we think and feel about money and our mindset. And what I learned was that my mindset was really off with money because
Hmm.
I kind of had the attitude of, money is only for the rich or investing is only for the rich. And why would someone average like me be able to invest? And I really learned that that was the wrong attitude. So I discovered once I was able to shape my behavior
Hmm.
around money, that's when the money really started to do well and
Yeah.
to improve.
That is a really interesting part. Let's tackle on that a little bit, and then you continue with the rest of your story because it's such a beautiful story. But the misconception that people have around money, and I have that too, honestly, it's how many of us actually don't know anything about start saving? I always thought like saving money and tracking everything, it just has to be like a rigid, horrible obligation that I hate
Hmm.
doing. And I don't even today, I'm in my 40s now. Like, I wish I could say in 30s. So good kudo for you for actually tackling that in your 30s. I mean, I'm still in my 40s. I've been trying this for like the last 10 years and not been successful. But with your book, that's what I'm saying is that it's really make it simple. With your book, I am now motivated and I can see a plan and a direction. I don't have a clear picture yet, but at least I have something to start with, which is so good. But talk to me about like some of the misconception around saving money that you had then, and I'll share mine, which I'm sure will be what most people struggle with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of my misconceptions were what the average American's misconceptions are as well, or Canadian, or anyone in the world, is that you have money and you're supposed to just kind of have money come in, and then throughout the month it goes out, and then when the month is over, you're pretty much going to be at zero. And
Hmm.
then the problem with that is that people just they work, they work hard, whether it's an entrepreneur, they're an entrepreneur, or
Hmm.
they have their own business, or they're W-2 employee, and then at the end of the month there's nothing left. And so what what I learned we really should do is you have to really respect yourself. And what I mean by that is you're putting all this hard work in. So
Hmm.
some of the respect you want to show yourself is to pay yourself first.
Yeah.
And so that concept really helped me of, I think most people think, hey, just go throughout the month, survive. But when
Hmm.
you pay yourself first, you're investing first. And so all that hard work that you're doing throughout the month, you're actually going to have something to show for it at the end. And as the months add up and the years add up, you get this amazing thing called compound interest.
Yeah.
And that just, amplifies your return. So that was a really huge piece for me, is just that idea, the simple idea of paying yourself first.
Hmm.
Because, and I think what a lot of people will also do is maybe they have a little bit left over after the month, and
Hmm.
they'll say, okay, I've got $200, $300. Now I'm
Hmm.
going to invest it.
Hmm.
Problem is that's not sustainable. And most months you're going to be closer to zero than,
Yeah.
a few hundred or in the thousands. But when you pay yourself first and kind of set up, and in my book as well, I have what I call automations.
Hmm.
And so if you automatically pay yourself first, where you just schedule, okay, every month I'm going to have X amount of dollars taken out into an investment account, you kind of set it and forget it. And you actually don't end up missing the money. And it just, you see the years go by and all of a sudden, shoot, how do I have $2,000? How do I have 10,000? How do I have
Hmm.
50,000? And it really starts to add up.
Yeah, and I think it's the beginning phase, and maybe we can break it down like in simple term, like some of the things that
Mm-hmm.
we people can do to help really accumulate and nurture that. Like one other thing that you mentioned is the compound effect, as well as the interest and all these different things. The book actually go into detail. We're not going to be able to go that deep, but at least we
Mm-hmm.
can give like somewhat of a clear guideline that is simple that people can start putting it into action right away. And one of that is like just automation, like getting your paycheck and automatically debit that and it gets into a certain account with regards to that.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the things that, other than that, what are some of the other things that they can actually start doing that really can start seeing the growth? Because at the beginning, it's hard, it's just a little harder at the beginning because you're like you want to see the result right away and all of these stuff, but when you're patient about it and then you start to see fruition, like I look at my boyfriend since reading this book, my boyfriend's been
Mm-hmm.
putting money away because we want to be able to purchase a home together within the
Mm-hmm.
goals of 3 to 5 years from now. And it's only been a couple months and now he's looking at his because he works for the bank, so they actually chip in a certain amount as well, and it's
Yeah.
worth him, like putting that money out. And in a few months, he's looking back, he's like, "Oh my God, I got like close to $4,000. I didn't
Yeah.
before I could actually save, but it was that easy." But it's like taking that decision and deciding to do it. At the beginning, you can't see the fruit, but over time, it accumulates. Yes.
It does. Yeah. I kind of account it to like, you plant a seed in the ground, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not huge into gardening, but you plant a seed and you water it and you water it and you
Yeah.
see nothing, and nothing's happening. But what actually is happening is the roots under the ground are taking effect. And so you've got this like immaculate root system under the ground. And as you water and water, you still can't see it. Then one day you see like a little sprout. And so I think that's what your boyfriend's seeing. He's seeing that little sprout of a few $1,000s, and it's like, whoa, where did this come from? And he
Yeah.
really hasn't been saving that long. So that's amazing to hear.
No.
And then you keep watering, and all of a sudden you've got branches and you've got like a real plant. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of equate the same thing to money is, and as you mentioned, the hardest thing is to start,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we have this expectation that we should be good with money and we should be accumulating money. But the reality is no one talks about money, or
Mm-hmm.
very few people. And the education on finance or money that we have comes from our parents or from friends growing up. And if no one's talking about it, you don't really have an education. And so all of a sudden people reach their mid 30s, their 40s, and they're like, why am I not accumulating money? Why am I paycheck to paycheck? Well, you just don't know about it. And
Hmm.
so the more we educate ourselves, I think that's the first thing is to get a little bit of education, so that you have those first steps of what to do. And then the
Hmm.
next thing, like when you have the education, just
Hmm.
start with something. I mean, people think, well, if I'm not investing $1,000 a month, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But really, if you have $30 to invest or $50 or whatever it may be, like just get started. Because once you get started, you start to gain confidence, and then the compound effect really starts to take form.
Hmm.
Where, and I'm not just talking about compound interest. I'm talking about the compound effect of your behavior and your actions. And
Yes.
what happens as well is you start to find ways to save more and to invest more.
Yes.
So it just,
Look, in the book, yeah, that's what you mentioned, and it's really, really good. It's like the good habit of the
mm-hmm,
compound effect. How saving a few money here and there seems like, oh, I'm only saving 12 bucks. What's the point? But 12
mm-hmm,
bucks here, 10 bucks there, they all
yeah,
add up, and those good behavior over a long period of time. Like
right,
what you said, the
right.
analogy of the plant, just water and water, and over time you start seeing it sprouting. I love that
Mm-hmm.
analogy. It's gonna stay in my head, but now
Oh,
it's the
thank you.
money tree that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think another thing too that will help your audience is
Yeah.
what, and it's kind of in the personal finance space, is called value-based spending. And so
Hmm.
there's different terms for this, but it's basically spending money on things you value
Yeah.
and then cutting out the stuff that you don't value. Because what happens with most people is we get into this automatic routine of life where every morning we're just going out and getting coffee or we're getting breakfast, and you don't really even enjoy that coffee or breakfast. You're just doing
Mhm.
it because you did it yesterday, the day before, and the day before that. When really, if you think about it, if you made breakfast at home or you brewed your own coffee, it's probably not going to make a big difference in your life.
Mhm.
So I think one thing in personal finance that always is kind of ragged on is like the coffee thing and the latte factor, but
Mhm.
that's just more of a symbol of the value-based spending where you're just spending on the things that you value. The other stuff you're not. You're finding a way to either eliminate it or spend less on it. And then the coffee is just kind of a symbol of that. But that goes for like buying out lunches or
Mhm.
going out with maybe friends that you don't care about as much.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, if you've got a really good friend and they're in town, I believe you should go hang out with that person and have dinner and enjoy yourself. But if it's just like a routine Tuesday evening or afternoon, and it's people like, I could take it or leave it,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
decide to go to the gym instead or do something
Hmm.
else, work on your business, and that's where those habits kind of come into effect.
Yeah, and there's so many things, Aaron, that comes to mind, and you haven't like a particular exercise to really have a vision of what exactly you're trying to achieve. At the beginning of the book, I actually did it, and some of the goals that you actually narrow it down make so much sense to me because they actually resonate with me. Like for example, highest value, because we got to show respect towards money. And that's one thing
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand. I didn't value money as much because I always associate money as being something sinful with my grandfather being a monk. So I always had to do
Mm-hmm.
the opposite in thinking that I was honoring him. But anyway, I did the blockage of that. But what you listed down is like highest value in life, which I love. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of quote that. Like, for example, in Aaron's context, it's like having positive relationship with families and friends, spending a lot of time with and being fully engaged. Number two value is
Mm-hmm.
consistent exercise and healthy eating, which is like so far, it's like mine as well. So there's five value that you list
Mm-hmm.
out, and then wherever the values are, your money has to go into honoring those value, which makes it so much more easy to know where to spend your money. So it's
Mm-hmm.
being intentional. It's not where like what I really love about Aaron's book is he's not saying deprive yourself, which seems to be message of so many other book, which makes me annoyed and reject it because I
Mm-hmm.
hate feeling restriction and obligation. Whereas in Aaron's book, it's not at all that. And I don't feel judged for being incompetent or not knowing so much about finance. You make us feel like I understand there's thing we're gonna fall out of the rail, like, but get yourself back on, get into the good habit, be intentional on how you spend, and understand the value base of what you're spending on. So developing those good habit over time will see the compound effect of your money growing. Like all of a sudden, you don't realize like that money, 5, 10, $20 here and there at the end of the year, how much that adds up to. And since we've done that exercise, honestly, it has been so helpful. Like my boyfriend has reviewed a whole bunch of different things. He was being charged close to $200 just for his car
Hmm.
insurance. And just looking at it, putting his car insurance under mine, he's saving $100 every single
Wow.
month. Like honestly, Aaron, like I'm just saying it's so small, but it's big. Your book is so powerful. And it's the funny part is like Aaron didn't tell the story about how he came to write this book. So you're gonna be like so glad he wrote this book. I love this book. I am so grateful that so many years ago you decided to persist and continue and you made this book come to life. But yeah, so like for example, value number 3 for Aaron was personal and professional growth. Number 4 is stable finance with strong investments, strong financial reserve, value-based spending, all without consumer debt, which is so
Hmm.
good. And number 5 is travel and recreation. So when you look at those values, so when you put the money out, you ask yourself, like, does this go into helping me achieve the goals that I want to be able to tackle? If the answer is no, then you might want to reconsider that. But it makes it so much more simpler. It's the same thing with business. When like I think about my business, what is my business? My brand is on fun and then authenticity and luxury. So those are the 3 things that are extremely fundamental. When I actually have people on my podcast or I want to deal business with people, I think, are they authentic type of people? Are they
Hmm.
actually like somebody who like is radiating on fun and teaching something that's going to be valuable to the audience? When you know where you're going, it makes it so much more simpler. And it's the same concept with money. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And I think you summarized the first half of the book perfectly. Probably better than I could. So, I really like, I like your takeaways from those first few chapters, especially the value-based spending, because
Mhm.
when you really break it down, so many of us are just kind of going through the motions, and
Yeah.
we're not really, the word you used was intentional.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be intentional about what we're spending on and what our experiences are, because not only is it money, but it's also time.
Yeah.
If you're spending time on things that you don't really value, you're also wasting, like that's
Hmm.
a waste of your life as well. So it kind of, I think when you create some of these good habits with money, it
Yeah.
also trickles down to some other areas of your life. So like health, for example, I would have no problem spending money on a gym membership or a personal training course. So,
Hmm.
and that's a good, it's not just a good use of my money, it's also a good use of my time.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to spend money on something else that I don't care about, because it's not just a waste of money, but also a waste of time. So
Hmm.
I think when you start to assess your values and, even though it's with the intent of improving your personal finances,
Hmm.
you notice that also trickles down to the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
that's what's happened with me. And so I don't think there's any mistake that there's a direct correlation. When I got my finances turned around, I also got my health turned around. Excuse me,
Yeah.
as I'm coughing. I got my health turned around. I got my relationships are great.
Yeah.
And I just feel like my life in general has
Much better.
improved.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
agree, like relationships and money, like careers, they all kind of interconnect. Relationship
Hmm.
is fundamental, relationship with money and your
Hmm.
career, because that's where you're spending a lot of your time there with
Right.
people you're working with. But
Right.
if you get the money down, it allows you room for breathing. It doesn't create over like a heavy amount burden on the relationship itself. So it gives room for people to exist to do. And honestly, if you're living in scarcity mode, it's whether you have a really good relationship, it's going to impact that relationship as well. I mean, if you have a great supporting partner, it makes it a little bit more easy, but
Yeah.
the hardship is there. But when you are smart with your money, you know how to do it. Is that I wish I listened to the advice of this 2 couple that I used to work in the foster home with kids, and I was in my 20s, and they said, Ree, And I knew they were right. I just didn't know how to do it. They said, like every money that you have, open an account of an RRSP and just put in $20 away and
Mm.
forget about it. If I did it that time in my 20s, I would have like close to $1 million by now. Honestly, with all of the things that I spend on the clothing, the shoes that I didn't need it, but I was just doing what other people were doing. But now I'm actually being smart of where I spend my money. And so you got to know where your weaknesses are. I don't know about you guys over there, but I have a problem when it comes to going into the store with things that are discounted. I have a hard time. Like, I tell my boyfriend, like, I can't go into the store by myself because I will end up bringing so much more stuff than what I'm supposed
Right.
to go in. Like, I went to buy one thing at that store. I needed something for cooking, one thing only. And it turned
Hmm.
out I walked out of there with 10 different items. And then he's like,
Right.
that my boyfriend is so good at it. He just goes to the store for what he needs and he comes out.
Mm.
But that's the other difference. He actually got the beautiful skill of his parent where they had very little money, how to work with little money and live on little money, which is
Yeah.
good. But you also have to go through the other part of like not always staying small. But that's how like generation and parents and all of these values on money that has been passed on to you. You got to be mindful of that. And so
Yeah.
me, I go to the other extreme. Like my parents are good saver. I don't know. They make smaller salary than I do, and they end up saving more than I do. I'm like, if they can do it, I can definitely do this, but I don't know how. But now
Yeah.
reading your book, I have an idea of how to do that because when I go to the store, I've been so good though, Aaron. You'd be so proud of me. In the past month, I have not really gone to the store by myself. I only buy what is there. I used to be the type of person people say, like, just write it on your checklist and only buy what's on that checklist. I
Yeah.
can't. I cannot. I'm like one of those person. I'm like, everything's on my checklist. Why not add five more? I'm like, why buy one bag of chip when you can buy three bags of chip and it comes out to less? I don't need
Right.
three bags of chip at home. It's not good for me.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I actually wrote a blog post about this
Yeah.
of, people buying things on sale. So
Hmm.
I give the example of, let's say you've got three really nice coats that you use pretty much all the time, and that's really all you need, right?
Yeah.
And you go to the store and you had an intent to buy a pair of shoes, but then you see this coat that's 30% off. Okay. So the coat was $200 originally, now it's $60 off.
Hmm.
So a lot of people would say, "Yeah, I saved $60 on this coat," and I would say, "Actually, you spent a lot more money than you intended to. So you really didn't get a sale. You
Hmm.
bought something you didn't need."
Yeah.
Now it's one thing if you had an intent to go buy a coat and you saw this coat on sale and you got a great deal and it's a coat that you love, like
Hmm.
by all means buy the coat, but don't go into a store intending to buy a pair of shoes and then come out with a jacket and a coat and a pair of jeans and things like that because that's really not a sale at that point.
No, it isn't. It's hitting hard on the wallet. And what I really
Hmm.
love about your book, I keep saying I love it because I truly do love your book. What
Hmm.
I really love about it is being really intentional and how funny we talk about being intentional in life, being intentional in your relationship. It's the same concept with money. The more intentional you are, the more respect you show for the money, the more the money rewards you. And,
Sure.
I used to be the type of person where I didn't really care about money. So I kind of just like, I treat money as if because I was so scared being repulsed by money or liking money. And then there was this beautiful TED Talk that I actually listened to. We talk about money, we hated it, and blah, 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 blah. But if you're
Hmm.
going to talk like that to money, why would it wants to come to you? I can't remember the exact analogy, but the way he said it made so much sense. But yet, we're longing for money and we
Yeah.
need it to be able to live instead of seeing as something bad. I see it as a beautiful energy that keeps circulating, that allows
Hmm.
people to be able to have choices to afford trips and to spend time with their family. So when I started shifting in how I view money as money is a type of energy that is just
Yeah.
circulating. And that makes it so much more easy. The negative connotation around money kind of dissipate. And the other thing that I really love about you, you're not telling people not to spend, just be wise with how you spend and be intentional.
Hmm.
And that makes so much more sense now for me. Like ever since I did that, reading your book every single morning has been, it's been my accompanying friend, like before I go to bed and when I wake up in the morning.
Oh, good. Happy to hear that. And you mentioned earlier, and you're kind of circling back on it, is the concept of deprivation. And I
Yes.
think that's why a lot of people don't do well with money is they feel like they're deprived and
Yes.
like, oh man, I can't go out with this group of friends tonight, or I have to stay in tonight, whatever it may be. But really, when you do that value-based spending concept, you're still spending on the things you want,
Hmm.
but you're cutting out the stuff that you don't really need. So in my opinion, that doesn't circle into deprivation.
Hmm.
Deprivation is like I give an example in the book is you've got some buddies who want to go on a trip together to see a game and like you've got the money, you really want to go, but you're like, no, I'm not going to go because I want to save the money.
Hmm.
Then that's deprivation. That's a lower quality of life. That's something that you're going to regret when
Hmm.
you turn 75, 80, 85 years old. But if it's something like, okay, just, we mentioned earlier, like an average Tuesday afternoon and some people
Hmm.
are going out to dinner and you're like, well, I probably would rather do something else. That's where you say no
Yeah.
or, no, thank you. And that's not deprivation at that point.
And you give such good stories and example of people that you talk about like this couple, and then you talk
Hmm.
about another couple, a couple who was
Yeah.
making a huge amount of money, but they were
Hmm.
like misspending on all these different things, things they didn't really value, but just part of an automation. They're doing it, but they're not really reflecting. Versus another couple who had made less money, are more intentional and more conscious in how they're spending, and then there are many different ways which we'll tackle on how to be able to save money big time. Like one of the things you're telling about the insurance, the type of car that you're buying, the insurance on the cars, and all these different saving that could actually, well, that's one of the reason why my boyfriend changed to with the car insurance, like from
Hmm.
reading this book. But like
Yeah.
all these different other component where, yeah, the coffee, not that small amount, we're looking at the long term, but be
Hmm.
reasonable with it. Just don't go buy coffee because you like, you're doing it, but you don't really have no pleasure from it. It's just part of
Yeah.
it that you do. Like assess it, like depending on your personality, like go with what works for you. That's what I love about Aaron's book. It's never to the extreme. It's like find your middle ground and work with that, and that's what's going to really make it sustainable for you, and you're not going to give up on the money. If you're going to deprive yourself of just, you showcase in the book like people who are like obsessed, like I gotta save money, and
Hmm.
they're punishing themselves through that process, and then they end
Hmm.
up giving up and they go, oh, this doesn't work. Well, no, it's not going to work because you're depriving yourself versus somebody who is intentional spending it, and yet they're spending it value based in like doing things that, maybe going out for a sport with friends and family or a graduation. One of the stories
Hmm.
that I really loved was about this gentleman. He was being invited, exactly what you said, being invited. It's like a reunion, a class reunion, and he has an
Yeah.
amazing time with these groups of guys, and they're about to go. He wants to be able to go to this particular events and sport, and he can afford
Hmm.
it, but he chose not to. And then when people came back, they were all raving about how
Yeah.
amazing that was, and he has regrets about it. Don't be that fool.
Yeah. That's right. Don't be that fool. I'm gonna steal that one. Yeah. That's
I
exactly right.
Yeah, and I love
Yeah.
that about how you. So let's talk to the people of how other ways they can actually save a couple of bucks, but bigger, has a bigger impact on their wallet that they can put it away. So one of it I
Hmm.
mentioned with regards to car, like deciding, are you going to buy a brand new car or a used car? Because there's the depreciation on the value of the
Yeah.
car insurance, and all these things.
Yeah. There's some really big ticket items where if you
Hmm.
get those items correctly, you're gonna do really well, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
So those ones are going to be housing, and then
Hmm.
you're gonna have transportation, and then you're
Yes.
gonna have food. And for a lot of people too, I would probably add a fourth, which is going to be health insurance or other type of insurances. So
Hmm.
like starting with housing, and this is where we get into kind of that, that trap of lifestyle creep. And so
Hmm.
that's basically lifestyle creep is you just keep increasing your lifestyle as
Hmm.
you make more money. So the classic example would be like someone who's in college and they're living with a few friends and they're splitting a room and it's all good. They're having a great time. And then all of a sudden they graduate and they get their first quote unquote real job and they decide they need like this one bedroom luxury apartment. And
Mm-hmm.
so like right off the bat with that decision, let's say the rent for that is $2,500 a month. Whereas if you split a house, a two, three, four bedroom house, maybe you can knock your rent down to 1,200 a month or 1,300 a month. So like with that one quick immediate decision, you're saving 12, $1,300 a month already. So if you invest that money when you're younger, like in your 20s, so hopefully you've got some people listening to that age group, is that the compounding of that is just astronomical. Even
Mm-hmm.
if someone invested from like 22 to 30 and then completely stopped investing, they're going to do really well from that. So like that's just one decision. That's not even it's we're not talking about going out, we're not talking about other things. That's just the one act of saving really big on housing. The next is something you mentioned, which is transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing a lot of us are guilty of, and I did it too. Is
Mm-hmm.
we get the first real job, or you get a promotion, or something
Mm-hmm.
where you have additional income, and immediately we turn in the old car,
Yeah.
and we get payments for the luxury car.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with a luxury car, but there's something wrong with it when it's depriving your future self of
Yes.
financial freedom. So that's another huge thing. So like the difference between that, you can have zero car payment, or you can have a car payment of nine hundred $1,000 a month. Like that makes a huge difference. So
Mm-hmm.
think of how many dinners you can go out to, or how many experiences with friends, how much compounding can take effect with that. And then another big one is food. So
Mm-hmm.
like if you just make an effort to cook at home the majority of the time, you're going to save so much money. Whereas, and I would say you don't want to slip into deprivation either. So if you've got great friends going out and you decide on a Friday night you want to go out to dinner with them, like by all means do that. But what so many people slip into is it's Wednesday night. I don't really feel like cooking, so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
DoorDash, or I'm just gonna do takeout, and that's $40.
Mm-hmm.
When if you made a meal at home, number one, it would be healthier. Number two, it's probably going to cost about somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $10 for a good, healthy home cooked meal. And
Mm-hmm.
like to me, that tastes just as good as the $40 meal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about it day after day, if you cook instead of ordering out or going out to eat, you're saving probably in the hundreds
Yeah.
for the week. So that's a big thing. And then yeah, you've got good friends going out on a Friday, Saturday night, or even a random Thursday. Yeah, go spend the money, have a good time, enjoy the experience, but don't make it because of just convenience, or like,
Yes.
I didn't feel like cooking tonight. So those are three really big things. And then, like your boyfriend did, is shop around for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just one decision. It probably took him 1 or 2 hours, but
Yeah.
he saved $100 per month
Yeah, that's
with
twelve
that
hundred a
decision.
year
Yeah,
in
yeah,
pocket. Just that alone allows us to go on a trip.
right, right.
Memories together. And we were thinking like, how do I save money? Just by changing the insurance. Like there is the vacation.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, like, as a caveat to that, you want to make sure that you're still getting quality insurance and it's not going to be like
Yes.
some
Yeah.
low rate that's not going to pay out. But I would imagine he probably found decent insurance, and
Hmm.
he's going to be fine in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you said, that's a trip, that's investing, whatever you choose. So, like, he's being very intentional with his money there, not burning it on insurance just because he had this insurance for the last 5 years. Like, he's going and finding a better deal
Hmm. And
without sacrificing the
yeah.
quality of it.
Sorry about that. Yeah, don't be shy to shop around. That's what I always do. But that's from reading other books and stuff. But that's what also Aaron is saying. Don't be shy to shop around because people do it out of routine all the time. They're always with the same insurance company. And after a certain amount of years, like 3 years, they start increasing. You're like comfortable with it. Don't be shy. When it's time for your renewal of your insurance, just look around. If you're getting to save like $200, $300 in your pocket, that's money for
Mm-hmm.
you. I do it every single time when it's like every two years or so. Maybe I won't do it on every year, but every 2 years I make sure like the price goes up and I'm comparing. And then if they can match
Yeah.
with another company, I'll stay with them. And They're good insurance. Some insurance are better rate than others. I've learned over time because I do it, but don't be shy about it. Like, just the example of my boyfriend is $1,200 in our pocket that we don't have to work so hard in trying to earn that money.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned that was really good as well was um the amount, like for example, all those big ticket items that we have, like when we
Hmm.
do this in a way where um like if I'm thinking in the big picture, okay, so items like houses, when you're buying and purchasing a house, like just because everybody lives in the main downtown area doesn't mean that you
Hmm.
actually have to be a part of it. I am grateful for that because the house that I purchased is a little bit further, but it has other things that I love. It's close to nature, it's close to the water, which I
Hmm.
enjoy. It allows me to be healthy, to walk around. Whereas, like in the city, as much as I love the city, I hate the damn noise. I hate all of the cars. So, like, really take the time to sit down and invest for what you're going to put out in $500,000 for a home that's in the downtown area. Half of that could be saved towards other things for you, putting an investment aside for your future. People need to remember, I think now that I understand with my business, like when people have their why of why they should be intentional with their money, it makes it so much
Right.
easier to sustain and to keep the momentum going in saving money. But if you don't know why you're doing it, you don't see the purpose. You're like, why am I like saving $5 on a coffee? Well, when you have a goal and your why is like in 3 years, like with me and my wife, in 3 years, in 5 years, we are planning on having a down payment for a house. So yes, saving that $5 of not spending coffee, it doesn't look like much, but add it into the pot, it will add up over time. So I have my why, and it makes it easy to refuse not doing the regular old thing of buying these things that are not going to
Yeah.
add to my value. But because people don't have a goal or a purpose. And I would also say lack of preparation, like not planning,
Hmm.
like what you said, buying out because you didn't plan ahead of time because you didn't cook. So out of the spur of the moment, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know what to eat. I'm just gonna order in. But if
Yeah.
you plan it ahead of time, like, and that's why it's good to do the preparation. The whole point is people are thinking, like, I gotta make the perfection of planning this thing so well. You don't have to. I've
Hmm.
learned because I used to be the type of girl who hates planning because I feel restricted and I don't like restriction. I like freedom. But
Hmm.
I realized there's a balance in between the two. The not preparing at all is a disaster.
Yeah.
The
It
over
is.
preparing
Yeah. Yeah. And
takes
I
you
would
forever.
kind of add what you're saying. I think
Yeah.
some structure is freedom. So
Yeah.
as an example, if every day at 6:15, 6:30 at night, you're like, what am I going to do for dinner? That's to me, that's actually stress.
Hmm.
And whereas if you had some structure and maybe Sunday you took the time, prepared a couple meals, and
Yes.
Thursday night, okay, immediately I've got this. I'm going to just heat it up. I'm going to have a meal in 5 minutes. To me, that's a lot more enjoyable than trying
Yeah.
to scatter around. Oh, what should I do tonight? Because then, I'm big on a concept called decision fatigue.
Hmm.
Because like if you look at it and you have a hard day at work or hard day with your business, and it's 6:15 at night and 6:30 at night, and you're having to make a decision, you're probably going to default to which
Hmm.
you perceive as the easiest thing at the time.
Yeah.
But when you cut out some of those decisions you have to make, the little small stuff, it just makes your life easier. So it's like kind of embedded in your daily routine. And that's where like I get back on you can go back on the personal finance thing with coffee or buying out lunch, but it's not just about like making that decision every day, because if you had to decide every day, I'm not going to get this coffee or I'm not going to buy this lunch, that's going to be exhausting and it's
Hmm.
actually going to be more stressful. But
Hmm.
when you decide months in advance, you know what? Every day I'm going to make my own coffee, but on Friday I'm going to treat myself and I'm going to go get my favorite coffee and
Yeah.
put my favorite creamer in it, whatever it may be. Like
Hmm.
you're creating that structure and system for yourself,
Hmm.
and all you have to do is follow the plan.
Yep.
And I think that's where so many people get kind of backwards, is they don't have that plan, and
Yep.
they're having to make those spur of the moment decisions, and then they're going to default to what they perceive as the easiest thing at the time.
That plan is such a game changer plan,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Like for me, it has been so helpful because when you know, like you are being intentional, like I'm not gonna have buy the coffee at the same store where you go to. I'm gonna bring my own coffee, and on a Friday, I'll treat myself. So it feels
Hmm.
like it is a choice. It's empowering. I made that choice, and I am being
Yeah.
intentional. That money that I don't spend for the 4 out of 5 days, it's gonna go into
Hmm.
saving. And the decision fatigue is such a powerful one. You don't understand how the brain hijacks it when you have a
Yeah.
decision fatigue. It does things, you're no longer in control. It
Hmm.
controls you. And what you don't want is being controlled by the things that you did not plan for. So I agree 100%. Like when we try to cook ahead of time, and honestly, with COVID, going out to the restaurant is not as fun as it used to be anymore. It costs
Yeah.
so expensive. Like just as a couple,
Hmm.
it's at least easily over $100 of spending. And I don't even get the experience I used to have. So
Right.
I don't even
Right.
want to go out. And honestly, eating at home is so much more healthier
Hmm.
than you can actually. I'm not saying to deprive yourself from, I mean, I think the message is clear. We're telling you don't deprive yourself. Find a freaking
Hmm.
balance, okay? Like
Yeah.
reward yourself as long as it's aligned to the value base of what's important for you. And like for example, like us, we prep ahead of time for meals. I plan
Hmm.
out like, okay, like say for example, we say we're gonna reward ourselves, but when I planned out for the entire year or the next 6 months of how many time we can go out as a couple, how many time we can afford to go out with friends, then I know a quota of how many time that is so that I'm not stuck like every time when something pops up because unpredictability comes up. People invite you to
Hmm.
different things. They're getting married or some other person's baby shower. If you didn't plan that out, chance are it's gonna mess up with your budgets. And
Yeah.
catching up, the game of catching up sucks. And I want to
Hmm.
be able to say this too, because when you plan, fail to plan is, I forgot what the expression, if you fail to plan something, you're not doing it properly. So you
Yeah.
have to be good at it. I think that's the message I want to be able to drive through because I've been there. I used to think like I gotta plan and budget this thing, get it down to accuracy 100%. No. Um,
Hmm.
it's a craft. It's a skill set. You need to put it in practice. The sooner you can put it into practice, the better in the long run for you, and the bigger the eggs will grow in your basket.
Absolutely.
So just prep, do the best that you can, and modify it as you go, as you realize there is certain weakness, there's things that you need to kind of adapt. It's an
Hmm.
ongoing craft, right? Um, and you get good by putting into application and applying. The
For
one
sure.
thing I wanted to
And
mention, yeah,
I do have some controls for that.
hmm,
So because I realize, and I have it in the book too, is that people are going to mess up. Like you're
yeah,
going to mess up with your money, and
yeah,
that's going to be you spent too much on this, or you went out when you wish you didn't. So what my wife and I do is we have kind of a backup account, and
hmm,
that's just money in an external account. And if we happen to go over, then we just pull from that, and
yeah,
it's not a big deal. Like try to learn from it and
yeah,
minimize those kind of mistakes. But you have to realize too in personal finance, it's not perfect.
yeah,
You're gonna make mistakes, so you want to have some controls in place so that when you make those mistakes, you're not pulling from the credit card or getting
mhm,
into consumer debt. Because when you, like you said, if you're chasing that rabbit of consumer debt, you can't get ahead because the interest rates are 20-25%, and it's just an impossible hole to get out of.
yeah,
Not impossible, a very challenging hole to get out of. So have the controls in place,
yeah,
and a lot of money is about behavior, and so
hmm.
that behavior of understanding, yeah, you are going to mess up. It's gonna happen, but you have something in place to pull back from.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that money is all about behavior. Now I get it. So
Hmm.
I'm watching my behavior. I'm like, am I doing good? And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're trying to say is that don't make yourself feel bad because you kind of fall off the rail a little bit. I love the idea that you said money aside for when you overspend and stuff, and it makes it so much more. It's such a good breathing room. Um,
Hmm.
But two things that you said that was really good. Credit card is another big money grouch as well. Like if you can
Yeah.
actually be with a credit card that, allows you to buy points and all these things, and there's so many different ways of saving. But if that credit card is like eating a good chunk of your money, you want to be able to look at that because that can help you save quite a bit too. Shop
Hmm.
around for your house, home insurance, and all these different things. The second thing that you said that was actually really good was so we said about money and credit cards. Oh my God, it kind of just slipped out of my mind.
As you're thinking, I credit
Yeah.
cards is something I'd like to bring up because it's something
Mhm.
that
The
it
good debts
it's
and the
it's
bad
an
debts. Yeah.
it's an epidemic.
Mhm.
So if you look at it, look at all on TV or online, all these commercials for credit cards, and
Yeah.
they've got these celebrities and different people, and then they've got these beautiful buildings, and they offer all these rewards and stuff. And my question for people is, how can they afford to provide that?
Hmm.
And the answer is they can afford it because people are paying
Hmm.
interest on the payments.
Yeah.
And when you buy something for $100 and you're paying 20 to 25% interest over the course of multiple years, that compounds the wrong way. So it's
Hmm.
like reverse compounding. So the reason these companies can afford the immaculate commercials and having these celebrities and offering all these rewards is because of us. We're giving them that money, and so it's really a vicious circle. Vicious circle. So a few things that credit card companies do. Number one, they offer the rewards to kind of lure people in. So if you use the rewards appropriately and correctly, they can be good. I know a lot of people who do, and I also know a lot of people who got hooked in that way. Now they end up paying a bunch of interest, and it's the rewards are out the window at that point.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is credit card companies really, I call it reducing the friction. And
Hmm.
that's a term I got from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Hmm.
But when you reduce the friction, that makes it very easy to spend. So when you're just tapping or you're tapping on your phone to buy something, super easy, or the one click online, super easy, and you just mindlessly spend. Whereas it used to be you pulled out cash, and when you pull cash out, it's painful. Like, oh man, I have to pull out this 60, $80 and it doesn't feel great. But
Hmm.
when you just tap, it feels easy. And then you see at the end of the month, you have this bill. But so just, I'm not saying don't use credit cards,
Hmm.
but what I am saying is be aware of some of those strategies the companies are using. Like they are trying to reduce the friction.
Yeah.
So if anything, when you go to pay to tap, really process in your mind, do I want to spend the $70? Do I want to spend this 80? And I think that's going to help people too.
Yeah, and a trick that I actually did was so I know that I got my weaknesses where I just grab too many things in my cart. So before I actually
Mm-hmm.
get to the cash, I would stand aside somewhere and I would remove item. I would force
Mm-hmm.
myself to remove item. And
Mm-hmm.
that really helps. It shows in my savings because by me just letting my old self go, it would always overspend, but removing myself to be intentional, do I really need this right now? And one of the trick that you said, like big ticket item purchase, like a TV or something like that,
Yeah.
give it a couple of days of really thinking it properly, maybe even a week before you decide that do I really need that item? Because oftentimes you realize you don't need it. Like you already got a 65-inch TV and you're gonna buy a
Right.
new version of it. Like, what's the
Right.
point? Like, honestly, it just feels nice to be able to afford it. And that's the other thing that you mentioned, the reward, the dopamine that you get, the hit
Yes.
doesn't sustain for a long time. Please explain it to people so that they know.
Yeah, when I was doing the research for the book, this is something that was fascinating to me is that the dopamine hit occurs even before you make the purchase.
Hmm.
So as an example, either you walk into a store or you're online shopping and you see something, right? As soon as you see that and you kind of make that connection of your brain that that's something you would like, immediately you're getting hits of dopamine. So like your brain is rewarding you right off the bat for that. And so what a lot of people then do is they feel good with that dopamine and they go ahead and they click and they buy it or they take it to the register and buy it, right?
Hmm.
So what I'm saying is, okay, take the dopamine hit, feels great, whatever. And then at that point, take a step back. So I'll
Hmm.
give a perfect example. Yesterday I was at Costco. I walk in and they put all the TVs and stuff when you walk in and I see this huge Connect Four game and I'm like, we're having a party in the backyard tomorrow, and it would be really cool to have this huge Connect Four game because there's these kids coming over, and
Yeah.
I think the adults will like it too. So I'm like, I should get that, but then I'm looking at it. I don't even know how I'd fit it in the cart. I walk around the store, get the stuff that I intended to buy, and guess what? Once I'm at the register, I completely forgot about this Connect
Hmm.
board game. Um, so it's stuff like that. And then like for the big purchases, you like you said,
Yeah.
a TV, a computer, something larger, give yourself a little break. So absorb the dopamine hit and then take a 24-hour break, a 48-hour break. And then if you still want it after that point and you're intentional about it and it's something that's really going to enhance your life, it's something you value, go ahead and make the purchase. Like I don't think any of us are saying never buy a TV or never buy something nice for yourself, but make sure you're intentional about it and that you're giving yourself the gift of time. Take a little break from those impulse purchases.
And understanding the psychology behind it. These people are marketing, they're paying psychologists, you're paying people and
Mm-hmm.
researcher to make sure you spend that money that's in your pocket. Like,
Yep.
can you imagine? It's all like purposely intentional to. There was such a good movie back in the old days, like 30, 40 years ago. I can't remember what the name of the movie is. Wherever he goes, it was like people bombarding consumer, like spend,
Mm-hmm.
spend, spend. Like in a society of today, we feel the void of like with material stuff, but we feel so empty inside. I don't want to feel
Mm-hmm.
like that. So it's important to be mindful that these are manipulation that is tricking you to want to spend your money because what is the ultimate goal? Why you should be fucking saving people is because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be a slave to societal, to the government of keeping you repressed and without funds and relying on them. When you have financial freedom, it is so empowering. I don't gotta go to the job that I fucking hate. I got the
Mm-hmm.
luxury to be able to choose to say, that job doesn't fit for me. I am going to go to a job that is going to be rewarding, that aligns with my lifestyle and the values that is important to me. That's why you're saving money. I didn't understand that before. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be controlled, but if you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck, somebody is controlling your life and you're not the one in charge. So now that I know that, now that I'm intentional with my money, it makes it so much more easy. I have a why. It makes it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more easy. It's not without its challenges, but it's not that shouldn't be the thing that holds you back. You know, you get perfection. Every entrepreneur, every business, every successful people had to start somewhere and build themselves up. It's kind of like the analogy of what Aaron said at the beginning. You water it, and it doesn't show up. And all of a sudden, it starts sprouting. And then all of a sudden, it gets a branch, it gets a leaf, and it gets something. And then you're getting big up there. Same thing with the concept of money. Me, my biggest motivation when I did the crypto investments and stuff like that, I was like, I don't want to be a slave to whatever societal expectation. They can dictate how, I'm trying to pay off my mortgage, and they can dictate like the interest from going
Mm-hmm.
from, I went from 2% to now it's 5%. From 5%
Mm-hmm.
can go up to 10, 15%. What am I going to do
Yeah.
when I don't have the money for it? I am going to be enslaved into this, and I want the freedom of choice. So what is
That's so
for you?
huge. And I'm glad you're bringing that up because almost nobody talks about this with money.
Yeah.
Is that it's that freedom of choice.
Hmm.
So think about your attitude. If you're going to work and you enjoy your work and your boss is great, fantastic. However, if you're one of those people who goes to work, you don't like it, you don't like your boss, it's a very different attitude. If you have $50,000 in the bank and no credit card debt, no consumer debt, you have the ability to actually leave that job. However, if you're paycheck to paycheck and you have $300 in the bank and you don't like your boss, you're not quitting.
Hmm.
Like you are controlled by that situation. So, I know people kind of look at money sometimes as greed or they have generational trauma with money, but when you look at it that way, it's providing you choices.
Hmm.
That's a huge game changer. And then the reality too is that $50,000 turns into 100,000 to 200,000 and more and more. And then you have more and more choices. So
Yeah.
it's just like you said, Ree, the more, not necessarily the more money you have, but when you have a cushion, you have choices.
Yeah.
And then that's just a huge benefit in life.
It's an extremely empowering. When you feel disempowered, it affects us every area of your life. You don't get to see to make choices clearer because there's something that's holding on to you to make all these
Mm-hmm.
wrong decisions. But when you have choices, the freedom to choose to really be aligned with you, It is a huge game changer. Honestly, like I had like my ex-boyfriend who used to had money and he would have a cushion. And so when he goes to a job and the boss is treating him like a piece of shit, he can just tell him to F off. I was like, I'm actually putting
Hmm.
tell him to F off. Like honestly, like I know what I'm worth. Like you don't diminish your own worth, but when you are confined and you have to live on counting on them to pay you, you're gonna be a slave to it. I love that. Um, Another thing that you said also that was really good, like for example, buying a car, like just because some people have to have like a Tesla or to have whatever car it is, but that car over another car, which is interesting. I actually saw a sport car, a Toyota sport car. I would never associate Toyota with something sporty. I would think
Hmm.
sport car with something completely different. But I looked into that Toyota sport car that the guy was driving, a beautiful car. I've never heard of Toyota making sport car. And when I look at the amount of how much that costs in buying that Toyota sport car versus another type of sport car that everybody's like luxury to have,
Hmm.
the drastic difference, they're saving over $200,000 in the freaking car. I'm like,
Yeah.
and the Toyota does an amazing job and it looks just as good. It's just not considered the brand name of the car you're supposed to have.
Right.
But
Right.
does that really matter? Like, that's what
Right.
it comes down to.
And then the reality too is like once you have your cushion built up and you reach either financial freedom or close to it,
Mm.
you can buy the Tesla or you can
Yeah.
buy the more luxurious car. But when you're in the process of starting your compounding and starting your journey, you should not be putting $900 car payments when you don't even have $900 to your name.
Mm-hmm. And, and
You've
and
got it
so
backwards.
many, yeah, so many books as well. Like so many people who have money. Like I can't remember who it was. Maybe the guy from Amazon as well. They still have the same old freaking cars that they have. They still live in the same old houses that they grew up in. They're worth billions of dollars, and yet they're choosing wisely and where they're spending money. I read another book as well. Like this guy does an investment, and I forgot what um such a there's so many good books I can't remember them all, but this guy was saying like you would assume people who have money that they just mindlessly spend them. No, they don't. They actually are quite wise in how they spend money. Like this one particular guy, he's super rich, has a whole bunch of money. He can buy a car in North America and it would be worth a couple millions, but why pay a couple millions when he can actually ship it, go to another country that has just as good of a quality cars and get it at a huge rebate of a couple $1 million. That's $2 or $3 million in his pocket that he can do something else. So we're talking about the big millions, but it's the same thing for us, like
Yeah.
in smaller amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so we're coming close to the end of it, but I am so passionate about it because honestly, your book has been such a game changer, Aaron. I want you to be able to tell people how do they actually get a hold of your book and what other project that you have going on right now that it's worth for them to check out.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation. The best spot is to go on my website, cashuncomplicated.com. And there I've got links to buy the book. So that would be a great spot. And then please email me. Like, I'd love to know what you think about the book. And please reach out to me. I always get back to people and, I want to see how the book made a difference. So, and then it's available in all major bookstores and, Amazon, all those things. So, and then again, a great way to reach out to me is through my website, cashuncomplicated.com. And I've got a lot of cool resources there too. I've really made an effort to blog, create
Mhm.
at least one new blog every week. So try to add some little value there. I've got a newsletter that I send out as well. But
That's
yeah, it's
amazing.
I'm really happy to hear you read the book and it's making a difference. And because that was the intent
Yes.
behind writing it and publishing it.
Absolutely. And I'm so, so proud of you. So happy because Aaron, like, he was telling the story a little bit before we came on, like before he actually wrote this book, he tried writing one of the book and then he got to a certain number of page and then gave up. Please tell the story and how this book came to become a reality and why you wrote behind it so that people can stand behind it because it's inspirational, your story.
Oh, for sure. This is something anyone can do. The story I was telling was I actually wrote a book or started writing a book probably 15 years ago.
Mhm.
I got up to maybe page like page 12. Four of
Mhm.
those pages were charts and graphs. So really, I only wrote like 7, 8 pages. And then from that point, I quit the book. Then fast forward years later, once I got my money under control, I ran into some people at work, especially who I felt like weren't making the best money decisions, and they were making the exact same mistakes that I made years ago. And so rather than get preachy with them and like tell them what to do, I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And so I really made a devotion to every day I was going to do 1 page a day.
Mhm.
And if I did a little more than that and I finished 7 pages by Sunday, I could take Sunday off. So fast forward, I got to page 36.
Mhm.
And at that point, I realized, you know what? This is actually a book now. I can, if I keep going, keep doing what I'm doing,
Yeah.
I can make an entire book. So that was like a big landmark for me. And I just kept doing 1 page a day and
How long did it take
got,
you, Aaron?
you know, 1 page a day. It took me to write it under 6 months. And then
Mm.
the rest of it was, you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the editing process or how to publish a book. So
Mhm.
that was a learning curve too. So the whole process in took about a year and a half to 2 years. But
Mhm.
if I did it again, if I wrote another book, I think I could easily do it in probably 6 months.
Congratulations. Like
Yeah, thank
the
you
persistence. Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah, I love it because honestly, like Aaron's he's like, I'm gonna write a book, like I'm gonna write this. Sometimes I was just telling people, and I love showing the book because I'm so, so proud of it. Like it has made a huge difference for me. And not because like Aaron and I only met once. We barely even had a chance to talk, but I already knew because I'm like a chatter butterfly. I just go everywhere and just hover and like so fascinated by so many people's story. But I knew that I was going to connect with Aaron. I knew that I was like, I got to know this guy a little bit more. And then when I got his book, I made it an intentional purpose for me to read the book. Like I believe in serendipity, like the book didn't just land on my hand for no reason. And it just happened to be on that year I wanted financial freedom. So thank you for that gift. And it's so nice as an author, both of us as an author because I just finished writing my book as well, Choose You, Choose Happiness, that Aaron served as an amazing reminder because oftentimes we have this kind of like imposter syndrome of like, who makes me
Mm-hmm.
qualified to write a book, right? But look, Aaron, he's like, he wrote it because he wanted to be able, he's writing it for himself because it was good, but at the same time, other people may benefit and I can't believe that it has benefited me so much. Like, honestly, I read so many different books and it never had the same motivation as it has done for me because Aaron has a beautiful way of telling the story, put it in a simple term, and then have all of the backup, the science behind it of why it is the way it is and why you should think in the longer term and how to do it step by step in an applicable way on a daily basis. So thank you so much, Aaron, for writing the book. I'm so happy that you're here. So, so blessed for it. And we're definitely going to stay connected. And I hope the audience, I know they're going to take a lot of benefit from it.
Yeah, thanks so much for the conversation and for connecting. It's been a great experience being on your show and kind of getting to know you. So thank you so much. And congratulations on your book too.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. And please go and reach out and check out Aaron's website. I'm going to definitely be checking out his website. I didn't know you had a website, but I'm going to go
Mm-hmm.
because I love the way he writes stuff and the way he tells stories. And there's the comparison, like, okay, this is what people would say, why you shouldn't do the saving. And then this is the couple, the reality. It's real people stories that you showcase and then you can see yourself through them and you're like, I definitely need to change my habits. I definitely need to change my behavior. So go check out his website, Aaron. Lovely to have you and thank you so much. So on that note, bye everybody.
Thank you.